What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 82 of the Noizze Podcast, brought to you by Noizze.co.uk and sponsored by Stereo Brain Records. I am your host / your boy, Chris Pugh, and as ever, I'm joined by my very good friend and Mr. Cynical himself, whose voice has returned, Samuel Lewis. Mate, how are we? Are we enjoying that return of the voice?
I absolutely am. Much to the presumable chagrin of all our listeners, I am able to speak at full volume again. But I'll be returning with some optimism today. Feeling pretty good.
Feeling pretty good, mate. As you can see from the title of this episode, this is our review of Trivium's new record, In the Court of the Dragon. Before we get to that, we should tell you who we are. We are the Noizze Podcast, and we come to you fortnightly on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, basically wherever you get your podcast. Me and Sam will be there. The best way to support us is by subscribing below if you're watching on YouTube, or by liking or following, depending on whichever service that you use. Follow us on Twitter at Noizze Podcast. Both me and Sam run that account. Sam, I don't see any reason why we should hang around here. I think we should just get straight into this. What do you think?
Completely agree. I'm very excited to do so as well.
Trivium's new album is called In the Court of the Dragon. It is out on October 8th via Roadrunner Records. It's the band's 10th album and the follow-up to 2020's What the Dead Men Say. I suppose, Sam, the ideal place for us to start talking about this record is kind of branching off something that I just said, their 10th album. Now, for you, who would have been listening to metal at the time when Ascendancy came out in 2005, does it feel weird that Trivium are on double-digit albums for you, considering you were on that train when we were 12 years old? And I absolutely was not, as I've discussed many times, I was not listening to metal at all then. So Trivium still kind of feel relatively like a fairly new discovery for me. Whereas for you, you've literally been on this journey since 2005. Does it feel weird that we've hit double digits?
It's strange to think that they've shed the moniker of like young up and coming metal band.
Interesting,
which it felt that they had for quite some time. I thought that they were still being sort of described as like, we were still excitedly talking about the potential of Trivium. Really sort of like 2008 when Shogun came out. I think in the second decade of the 21st century, then it started to shift to them being an established metal band that you would talk about alongside maybe your Lamb of God's and Machine Heads, which in itself is impressive because they're a generation beforehand. It's not surprising as such because it's cool that they've made it this far. And because I've followed them, like you say, since Ascendancy, and they broke into the main zeitgeist of sort of, you know, metal and things like that. I'm not hit with any surprise. It's not like I left them for 4 or 5 albums and have returned. But I think now they have, and have been for quite a while, a established main stage A-list metal band now for probably 4 or 5 years. So this doesn't feel like a leap where it's like, oh my God, they're in their 30s. Like Matt Heafy's no longer a teenager like he was in 2005. It doesn't feel like that at all. But it's nice to think, it's a nice way of reminding yourself, not just of Trivium being around for a while, they've been consistently really good for a very, very long time as well. Trivium's 12-year career has been really littered with really good albums the Crusade was a little bit of a drop-off, but I don't think it's a bad album. They've had lots of really, really, really great moments for well over a decade now. It's an incredibly impressive resume at this point.
Well, I think the graph of their career in terms of popularity would be interesting reading, wouldn't it? Because they had that 2005 moment of download where 30,000 people show up to watch them at 11:30 in the morning. And Ascendancy made them, obviously this is me looking historically back. Again, I wasn't listening to metal at this time, but with Ascendancy, they were kind of picked as this band are going to be one of the front runners of heavy metal for the next 2 decades. That's what Ascendancy did. And then you mentioned the Crusade. The Crusade didn't completely remove the train from the track, but it did halt the momentum. Shogun and In Waves put the train fully back on the tracks and were moving. Vengeance Falls was fine, and then they did Silence in the Snow. Now, I am going back quite a while here, Sam, but Silence in the Snow came out in 2015, and on our old podcast, which, listening back now, if we ever did manage to find the episode, would probably be terrible and we'd be embarrassed, but I do remember, actually, that we reviewed Silence in the Snow, and we were like, this isn't good. And the messaging around this album is really weird because Matt Heafy is doing interviews saying that singing's harder than screaming, and the album's not great. And there feels like, and in 2015, it felt like there was no momentum behind Trivium, but a much more kind of watered down version of momentum than what we had seen or what we would have been seeing at the end of the 2000s. So at that point, and I'll ask you what your opinion on this was, but I felt like at that point that Trivium, because of Silence in the Snow, the weird messaging around the album, the fact it wasn't great, I felt that from that point, Trivium would be always a sizable metal band with a good audience, but would never quite make it into the upper echelons, which their potential showed they possibly might in the mid-2000s. I can't remember, you were talking 6 years ago, I can't remember what your thoughts were post Silence in the Snow, but did you also feel that Silence in the Snow was going to be looked back at as this moment where Trivium had kind of been ruled out of the running of being an A-list metal band?
That's a really good question. I think that at that time, I think I'd resigned myself that their potential to be a great band had passed. I thought that they would forever be in the hall of very good. You know what I mean? Where they'd never transcended to be the type of band that we thought they would be. Because really, like, if you asked me in 2005, I would have said Trivium would have been the band out of that big foursome that would have made the greatest impact because of what they were doing at the age that they were and what they had the potential to be. I mean, Dying in Your Arms was like it was an A-list radio playlist song on Kerrang radio every evening. Like it was the equivalent of a number one hit selling song for that era. It was that, Tears Don't Fall, and like Come Whatever, like Through Glass by Stone Sour were like the three massive hits of like 2005, 2006, that type of era. And then Seize the Day, Avenged Sevenfold really became big a little bit later that year too. And that they were really poignant moments. What I felt like Trivium had slipped on, or actually come across as part of their songwriting, was a wonderful ability to mix the incredibly heavy and technical elements of metal with this real early ability to write a fucking great chorus. And they found that very early. Dying in Your Arms is an incredible, they don't play it live anymore, but it's an incredible rock song, incredible metal song. It's got everything that Trivium are great at. It's got all the heavy guitar solos, massive chorus, all that sort of stuff. And I was like, man, if they've got three of these in their career, there's the sky's the limit, because those are going to be the staple sort of songs that they can sort of rely on. And then they also Gunshot to the Head of Trepidation and Pull Hard on the Strings of Your Martyr. These were just real terrific songs. My issue was I think that over the next few years is Trivium actually actively tried to get away from that. They wrote Dying in Your Arms and then immediately thought, let's try not to do that again. And in the Crusade, they kind of got caught half and half between writing deliberately poppier songs that weren't quite as heavy as Dying in Your Arms at the time, which is weird to say, but that's the truth on the Crusade, or deliberately explorative, elaborate metal songs that actually kind of lost their thread, and they stopped finding that balance. I think they tried to try and do all of one and then all of the other. And then every album afterwards, even good albums, subsequent albums always seem like an overcorrection of what the previous one was. If they wrote a pop album, Shogun was really heavy and long and complex. And then In Waves was heavy but shorter, punchier. And every album seemed to be like a different, we could do this as well. And at no point did I ever feel during that and I said it's lots of very good albums, but it felt like they were never quite getting the balance right. They were always just finding a different version of really good. It's like, we'll just do a different version of what we did last time, or just go a complete overcorrection. And they never seemed to pull it all together as well as they did on Ascendancy. So by the time that, in a long-winded way to answer your question, sorry, but by the time we got to 2015 and Silence of the Snow came out with no real standout songs, lots of 6 out of 10, it was quite dull at times. It lost there was nothing to grab onto, and we're massive metal fans. All you need is a few ingredients to really hook us in, and even we were struggling to find that. I thought to myself at that point, oh, okay, this is where Trivium are always going to be now. They are always going to be a B+ band with 2 or 3 A+ songs, and more of an era. And to flip the narrative on that, which they have done over the last 3 albums, is incredibly impressive. I actually think it's more difficult to break out of mediocrity into greatness than it is to actually go from below average to average. So like, for example, Wage War had a below average album, the album before we reviewed it last week, and they broke back into, hey, these are a good band again.
Yeah.
Trivium have managed to, I think, in the last 2 or 3 albums, break out of these are a good metal band to these are an incredible metal band again.
Yeah.
And I think that is a much more difficult achievement, considering, like you mentioned right at the top, we are 12 albums in. Most bands settle for where they are and what they are doing. I actually think that the future for Trivium is more exciting than the last 5 albums worth of Trivium. And I absolutely wouldn't say that about Machine Head. I absolutely wouldn't say that about Lamb of God. I absolutely wouldn't say that about Bullet for My Valentine. I might say that about Avenged Sevenfold because they're just like a big question mark because you don't know what you're getting with them. But even so, if you said, all right, you could have the last 5 albums of Avenged or the next 5, give me the last 5 because what City of Evil's on that. I don't think they're topping that. So that whereas if you said, all right, if you could have the last 2 albums, What the Dead Men Say, and In the Court of the Dragon, plus the next 3 Trivium albums, or the last 5, I mean, it'd be really tough to weigh up because the future of them is incredibly exciting, and I can't believe we're able to have that conversation.
Well, you've made a tremendous point there that I was actually going to ask you about, because I wasn't listening to metal for the original boom of Trivium, so I don't know what that momentum felt like. But listening now, we saw Trivium on the back of their The Sin in the Sentence album tour, which was in 2017. And that was the album that came out after Silence in the Snow. And I felt like that was their statement of, okay, I'm glad you guys didn't give up on us. We can still write great metal songs. And I was excited to see Trivium, but I was there because of Code Orange, really. I was desperate to see Code Orange and Power Trip is what I wanted from that gig. Dude, we're seeing Trivium next month with Heaven Shall Burn. Great time coming our way. And I'm desperate to see Trivium. Off the back really of this excited. Album, I am visibly like almost frothing at the mouth, kind of excitement to see Trivium off the back of this album. How much momentum do you feel, if there's a scale and the momentum behind Trivium after Ascendancy was 10, where on the scale do you feel the momentum compares now? Because I haven't really got a frame of reference because I wasn't listening then.
I think it's close. I think it's close to that. I think it's about an 8 or a 9. The only reason that that I think it's lesser, because I don't think the quality's any less, is the fact that because Trivium are established, they're not quote unquote exciting.
Yeah, they're not the new thing. Yeah.
Right. And I think that if you're a metal publicist, you're probably more likely to talk about Spirit Box because they're a new, really exciting band.
I get that.
You are about Trivium because, and the thing is as well, like, if you're a Trivium fan, you're a Trivium fan, and if you're a metal fan, you'll get into Trivium, but as an established core group that you're trying to appeal to, if you didn't like What the Dead Men Say, are you going to enjoy In the Court of the Dragon? I mean, it's very similar. It's better, I think.
Yes,
we'll get to all that in a moment.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that is there a rapidly increasing amount of people that will be flocking to Trivium after 10 albums? Perhaps not. But what I think that they're doing at the moment to say massively positive for them is they're reconnecting with the fans that they had established and maybe went away over the last 3 to 5 years. They're not appealing to the new 19-year-old who wants the latest trend in metal or has just started getting into metal and wants something new and exciting. But if you're a metal fan, like I think actually target audience is people like myself and you who've been in the metal game, listen to this sort of music for 5 to 10 years and remember Trivium's early material and want them to be great again. Like I can still be pulled in by Bullet. If it was a really good album, I could be pulled back in. Avenged Sevenfold have always got my number, and that's the same sort of circumstance. And I think the momentum there is really, really good because I think there's an established fan base for Trivium that is just waiting to reconnect again. Because I think there's a chance that they could go back to playing sort of 10,000 seater arenas, or at least playing that quite regularly moving forward.
Let's talk about the album. I'll start with something that you may think is bold, but let's see. I would say I believe that this is Trivium's best album since Shogun. I would say that this is probably my third favourite Trivium album, with Ascendancy number 1, Shogun second, and then In the Court of the Dragon third. Are we aligning? Are we off? What do we think, Sam?
Yeah, I was listening to the album this morning, taking like deep breaths to try not to be hyperbolic when listening to this album. I think it's as good as Shogun.
Okay, great. Yeah. Maybe I'll get there after a few more listens, but yeah. Okay, carry on.
The reason that I'm not putting it over is I need to re-listen to Shogun, and I don't want to jump the gun. And I've heard this new album 3 times in 2 days, 4 times over the last 5, and I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment.
Yeah,
when it comes to this, because I've done that before, and then I've gone back and remembered how great previous albums were and felt a bit foolish. So what I will say for this is Ascendancy is still number 1 for me, and I know that in my heart of hearts, because I don't think they've written 5 or 6 songs better than sort of Pull Harder and Gunshot, and I just think that the album is just on its own.
Yeah, I agree.
And I actually wish that I wish you could almost rearrange Trivium's career where Ascendancy came later.
Yeah.
If they built up to it, you know, so I think that, you know, if that was their 4th album or their 5th album or something like that, maybe we'd feel differently about that band. But that's a different conversation for a different time. With this, I think better than any album in the last 2 or 3 albums, they've found the balance between the intensity and the aggression of early Trivium with their newfound progressive confidence that they've really started doing since Shogun, and then they revisited on What the Dead Men Say, where they're actually combining these progressive, lengthier songs that they've always been very good at, but they've dabbled with and moved away from and gone back to. But this is also now, whereas previously, when you got a progressive Trivium song, you knew it would be kind of melodic, and you knew it would be kind of slower, and then you'd be like a big chorus, it'd be like a ballad type number, or at least one of those songs where it's like a big, slow, fists in the air, singing along type chorus, and not like an actual, like Master of Puppets by Metallica is actually like a hard, heavy metal song, but it's long as well.
Yeah.
Like Trivium didn't write those sort of songs, apart from obviously on Ascendancy. And I felt that we've seen a return to that style of songwriting where they've actually bridged the gap between thrashy, hard, fast-paced, needling metal with also the progressive melodic elements they've also done. This time they're actually bringing those 2 things together, and that's something I hadn't heard since Shogun, and that's the reason why I think they're on a par. I also want to say that I said really positive things about What the Dead Men Say last year or the year before when we reviewed it in the first lockdown, which I can't believe is like 18 months ago now.
Crazy.
But I said that one of the biggest criticisms for What the Dead Men Say was that it's an 8 out of 10 album with no 9 or 10 out of 10 songs. It didn't have a big hit single. This has 3.
Yeah. There are 3 absolute barnstormers on this album. Don't tell me which ones you think of the 3. I want to see if we both got the same. Yeah.
Okay, terrific. And that, I think, has pushed this over the edge for me, because I loved What the Dead Men Say. It was really, really good. And I listened to it, a rarity for myself. I listened to it a lot afterwards. I often tend to listen to the album in the intense period of time that we review it. Yeah. And it does go on a Spotify playlist. I tend not to revisit, but with the Dead Men, I actually reopened the book on Trivium as a career. I found myself listening to him a lot over the following month. I feel this is going to do the same again. But yeah, I don't think your statement is bold at all. I think it speaks to the quality of this record.
The reason why I I'm with you, like, there's a chance that this is, but that In the Court of the Dragon is better than Shogun, but I'm with you, and I feel like that is quite a claim to make, and I want to be certain before I make it, because I have several times, and in fact, one of the criticisms of me as a quote-unquote music journalist, if that's what I would call myself, is I do get very excited in the moment, and I do tend to lose myself a little bit, and I make these bold claims, and then, like you said, a couple of weeks later, I think back, I'm like, not sure about that one, and maybe I shouldn't have said that. So I'm very confident it's the best since Shogun. I feel no trepidation in making that claim. And the reason why I'm so confident to make that claim, Sam, is this is an unusual thing. I'll go straight to two album tracks here. Two songs I feel like are just album tracks. No Way Back, Just Through, and From Dawn to Decadence are two songs that I feel like I just put in there to chunk out the album. But they are, in terms of what you could want from an album track from Trivium, they're as good as it gets when it comes to album. When it comes like 6, 7 out of 10 songs to just flesh out the album, I don't think you could want two better examples than from Trivium. And they're my two least favorite songs on the album. And they're the best example of what Trivium can do, if I've made that make sense.
No, absolutely. The average quality of this song is better than the average quality of most bands' songs in this in this genre. If you're saying 6 or 7 out of 10, what you actually mean is it's a 6 or 7 out of 10 Trivium song.
Yeah.
But it's like a 7 or 8 out of 10 metal song.
Exactly. Yeah. You've actually made my point much better than I did. But so much more exciting than talking about the songs that are just fine to flesh out the album. Sam, I'm going to go directly to what I feel like is one of the best songs Trivium have ever written, and my favorite on the album, Fall Into Your Hands.
Yes!
Oh my God, mate.
Best song on the album?
Mate, it's an absolute, it's incredible. That song, it's this 7-minute just piece of mastery, really. It's incredible. Alex Bent's drumming is phenomenal. He plays off the clean riff from Corey beautifully. I think pound for pound, it's the best track on the album because it's got Matt Heafy's best vocal work. It's got Alex's best drumming. It's got the best tempo change on the entire album when it breaks out the chorus. It kind of changes the whole complexity of the song. It's got Corey's best riff in the instrumental. It's got Pablo's best bass lines, and it's one of the best songs she's ever written. It's absolutely stunning. I could listen to that song just on a loop over and over and over. Even the violin-led outro is stunning. I am waiting to burst at the gates to see that song perform live. That will be a phenomenal moment. Fall Into Your Hands is a really special moment for Trivium.
I completely agree. And it's a return to some classic Trivium elements that, again, they've flirted with at points in their career, but it does seem like there's an element of this pulling together. I remember listening to it the first time and thinking, all right, this has got that big choruses that I heard on What the Dead Men Say, and they're really good at. But what it also has is the intensity and the ferocity of their earlier material too. And one has not been sacrificed for the other. And I've said this before, is Trivium don't get enough credit for this at all. They write melodic metal songs that do not at all lose any of the intensity, instrumentation, or fury of what a great metal song should have, while also not taking away of what the melody of a great pop and rock song needs. Like, it's really extraordinary that they're able to really, I think, better than any modern metal band consistently. I mean, there might be songs that you can point to say this is a better version of that, but to find 8 or 10 different songs that do that as well as that every album every 3 years is extraordinary. Matt Heafy might need to get consideration of one of the great songwriters of the last 20 years in alternative music for his consistency. And we're getting to the point now where if you want to pick a Trivium set list for a gig, I mean, like, you are running out of space. How do
whatever you want?
Well, you know what I mean? And you could just pick 15 songs of the last 10 albums. Fine. And it's the consistency is just, it's beguiling at this point. But specifically to Fall Into Your Hands, obviously I love the drum intro. I think it's incredible. The riff work at the opening is atypical for Trivium. Like, it's chorded. You know what I mean? There's chord play rather than like your standard sort of single note riffs and things like that. Really, really impressive. The fades into this sort of transcendent finish that just when you think it's over, rotates into this middle 8 section. It's like this blistering, wonderful riff. And there's an intensity to these songs that I haven't heard for some time. This is so impressive. And then obviously the chorus, as ever, there are 4 or 5 great choruses in this, but this is probably the best one on this album. And for musically, the solo at the conclusion, it's just incredible, absolutely incredible. Their ability to stitch together harmonies into solos, into riff changes, into middle 8s to going back to original choruses, but in a slightly different way, or repeating the chorus, but changing the instrumentation around the chorus, or repeating a figure from before in a different key. The musical IQ of this album is just off the charts. And this is where I talk about, I said this on the last album, and a lot of people disagreed with me because I kind of think they misinterpreted what I was trying to say. And I'm going to try and repeat it now and try and hope that I can actually explain it a little bit clearer. I think Trivium are this generation's Iron Maiden. I don't think that they are the same type of band Iron Maiden are. I don't think they produce the same type of music. But if you take Iron Maiden in the 1980s, what you got was a decade plus. It was a 1980 to say 92, including Fear of the Dark, 12 years of really well-written, intricately, consistently great metal songs that appeal to a set core audience that really did not drop in quality from 1982 to 1992. I'm not trying to say Trivium or Iron Maiden or the sound like that, but that is this generation's version of that, where really, dollars to donuts, you could bet that every album, it's at least going to sound like this, it's at least going to be this good, it's at least going to appeal to this audience. And they do that every 2 or 3 years, really, I think, better than anybody else. And then the similarities in terms of the songwriting, not the sounds they actually produce, but the way that Iron Maiden used to be able to, and still can to a lesser degree, stitch together these quite intricate, impressive songs that rotate from progressive metal to fast-paced, upbeat metal. Trivium do that, but like a modern-day version of, in terms of their songwriting structure. And I think that's where they're going to be for the next 10 or 15 years, where we'll be like, in a decade, like Trivium are about to bring out their 17th album. Isn't it incredible that this is still great?
Yeah.
And we'll be having that conversation every 3 years, and that's where they are. Because they just are. They've reached a point now where I think there's a maturity. They've reached that early 30s stage, which is probably like a person's peak as an individual, because it's all your youth and intensity of your 20s is still relatively there, athletically, all that sort of stuff. But you've gained like a decade of sort of wisdom and integrity and knowledge and dignity. You know what you're capable of. You're much more comfortable as songwriters. You've set, you know what I mean? Like you've set a market about what you can achieve and all that sort of stuff. They know what they're good at. They know what they're capable of. They know it doesn't work. And they're able to really sort of focus on what produces the best Trivium music. And as well for Trivium, they've got away from any toxicity around the band. Just gets immediately cast out. I'll give respect to that. They had problems with drummers. They just replaced the drummer.
Yeah.
And they the members of Trivium now, the five people they've got writing these songs, clearly you can tell are the 5 most committed members of the band to this piece of music. And the progression between what the Dead Men say to this probably shows that, you know, that it feels like a more cohesive unit in the songwriting and things as well. So yeah, this is obviously, in conclusion, this is a terrific album. This is album of the year contention without a shadow of a doubt.
I agree. It is album of the year contender. One of the other songs that I thought was your 9-10 out of 10 Stargazer of a track. My other one, I would have gone Crisis of Revelation.
I really like that one. It's not the one that I was going to refer to, but I really like it. Really great.
Chord progression on the intro, classic Trivium. Matt's vocals sound razor sharp. I think this might be his best ever vocal performance on the Trivium album.
I think that's a really good shout. I completely agree. Not just the difficulty that he applies, just the actual melodies themselves are so well written.
There's this huge uplifting chorus, that section where Matt's shouting, wait for it all to fall, when he's in front of, like, there's a borderline deathcore riff running behind that really like do-do-dum chug. Just brilliant. And then there's a drum roll that leads to this quite snapping pinch harmonic, which is the hardest thing on the whole album. And I was just this pent-up aggression bursting to get out of me listening to it. It's so cool. The other song that I thought this is a ridiculous, amazing, one of the best songs Trivium have written. You can't ignore the title track. It's incredible. That title track is. It's every single thing you love about Trivium existing in a track and turned up to 11. Heafy sounds great. There's a galloping riff on the verse. Matt's clean chorus comes in after the harsh build. That the Stars Have Died breakdown, oh my god, is just like stone inducing. The solo that breaks after that, after that section is ridiculous as well. But obviously, people have already heard in the title track, so we're not really revealing much there. But then outside of my three favourite songs on the album, I'm moving down now to tracks like A Sword Over Damocles and The Shadow of the Avatar, which are also amazing. And The Shadow of the Avatar is very Shogun-esque, isn't it? The Shogun purists will adore Shadow of the Avatar. That song's a banger, man.
Yeah, Shadow of the Avatar was the other song that I was referring to.
I thought it might be. Yeah.
Really, really love it. Starts off with like this. Well, I said that they don't sound like Maiden, but that introduction is Iron Maiden as fuck. That is like the
That's Maiden.
It's beautiful, man. And I was listening to that thinking, oh, please do like a bigger version of that where there's distortion in the background and you come back to it, and they do, but like with a vocal chorus and stuff. It's fantastic where you listen to a song and you're hoping for a certain direction to be taken, then it happens. It's wonderful. So I imagine watching your children achieve feels like. And it's just terrific. The chorus is great. I enjoy the tension of the build up to this groovy head bobbing breakdown. And then there's like, once again, Trivium just like, we need 30-40 seconds to fill. Do you want to write like a battery era thrash song and just put it like 35 seconds? They do that better than anybody else. We talk about like what an average Trivium song is in comparison to a band. The average Matt Heafy riff, just like his throwaway riffs that are just like segments in between, extraordinary. There isn't a bad riff on this entire album, actually. Nope. I think it's just wonderful. Again, I love the jaunty solo section. It doesn't follow a traditional rhythm. It's off kilter. It's really, really, really impressive. I agree with you that Sword Over Damocles is fantastic.
Yeah.
This shifting, snaking riff, massive chorus as ever. This ability to write these incredible guitar-led sections. I don't know how he continues and just able to continuously do this. Again, the solo at about the 4.5 minute mark near the end, it's just absolutely extraordinary. There were just so many lovely moments as well, like the first 30 seconds of Dawn to Decadence, where they just throw like pinch harmonics out of nowhere. Yeah. And then it's just like 3 different shifts and changes within sort of the opening minute and a half with drum fills on the main chorus. And then obviously the conclusion, I think is really, really good. Just his final finish. This is an imperious Trivium album. It's really, really terrific. But yeah, I'm gonna have to go back to Shogun. The thing that might tip it in this album scale is, just off the top of my head, my 3 favorite Shogun songs are the title track, Charybdis, and Torn Between Sicilia and Charybdis, and maybe Down with the Sky, maybe sneaks in at 3rd. Whereas this has like maybe 3 or 4 songs that are on Shogun's sort of level in terms of some of the songwriting and stuff. I just think it's really utterly extraordinary. I don't know what the next step is for Trivium, but they should be playing like Gajira-sized arenas. What's the difference at this point?
Right, see, this is where I was going to go to now. If Trivium, we could have looked at in 2015 and been like, oh man, it's a shame that they never really capitalized on their potential and momentum, what they could have been. I feel like it's not too late, Sam. I feel like this album is going to drop into the metal sphere and people are going to really, really fall in love with this album. And the momentum behind Trivium now is huge. A lot of that again is down to the brilliant way that Trivium like market itself. Matt Heafy's Twitch channel and like the way the band interact with their fan base is brilliant. They've always been a quality live band. I mean, Trivium could have done another 3 or 4 Silence in the Snows, and I would have been tempted to go to their tour. Just because they're such a great live band. I've seen them 4
times, and I would go every time.
They're just such a great live band. So, like I say, they could have said, Silence of the Snow, we're going to release another version of it every 2 years. And I'd still fancy going to the shows because they're just such a good live band. So all those kind of stars have aligned now, as well as Sin the Sentence was like a good return. What the Dead Men Say was great. I think this is like borderline phenomenal 9.5 out of 10 metal record. It's amazing. And also something that I haven't mentioned yet. This has got my favourite opening to a Trivium album, apart from Capsizing the Sea into In Waves, because X in the Court of the Dragon,
it's
brilliant. It's just genius. That intro blends so well with the opening of In the Court of the Dragon. It's amazing. They're gonna open with it, aren't they? When we see them next month. It's going to be amazing. It'll be brilliant.
It is.
That intro is going to be playing while they're standing on stage, and we're going to be waiting for that first lead riff of In the Court of the Dragon to come in, and Matt's first
hugging each
scream,
other.
and just hugging each other with a beer in hand, and we'll be buzzing. And it's amazing. It's genius. Looks like the only intro to a Trivium album I'll take over that is Capsizing the Sea into In Waves, because that's just the best, isn't it? It's just the best. They'll never write a better intro than that, I don't think. In fact, I think it might be my favourite intro to any metal album, Capsizing the Sea into In Waves. It's the hardest thing ever. I love it so much.
That's why they always do it for their encore, don't they? It's just tremendous.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's brilliant. Like, they're such a fantastic band. I think I've seen Trivium 3 times. Irrelevant the amount of times I've seen them, every time I've seen them, I thought, this is so much fun. They're so great. That's carried through, as well as like Matt Heafy's huge Twitch channel. And we have to mention it. I don't think there's a better purveyor for modern metal than Matt Heafy. He genuinely goes out of his way to promote and help new bands. It's amazing. Like, there's a small band called Earn, which released a really, really brilliant album this year. And Matt Heafy was like posting it on his Twitter channel. How he even found out about it, I don't know. Earn are like a small underground band from the UK. I don't even know how he heard about them. But Matt Heafy really goes out of his way to help metal, and it kind of portrays Trivium as the ultimate good guy band that you just want to get behind, and you want them to do well, and you want to be a part of the movement. And I don't think we need to hope for Trivium's movement to carry forward anymore, Sam. I think they're just going to do it. I just think this is one of the best metal albums I've heard in a long, long time. Absolutely album of the year contender. For me, it's immediate thought is it's my third favorite album I've ever done. I do need to listen to it a few more times. I listen to Shogun a couple more times to be able to really know, but immediate instinct, it's my third favorite. I think this might end up doing for their career what we would have hoped their career would have been by 2021. You mentioned, why can't they do what Gojira are doing? Ticket sales of the upcoming tour are going to be a big factor in that. But you know what, dude? If Gojira can do Alexandra Palace and the Motorpoint Arena in Nottingham, Trivium's next tour off the back of this album, there's no reason why they can't be in those arenas after this album. So I think this album is going to sell well. I think the metal sphere is going to eat it up. I think the ticket sales for the tours are going to be big. I think any festival that books them are going to put them really, really high up the lineup anyway. I mean, they're a third or fourth from headliner act anyway. I think after this, they're guaranteed at least third, maybe sub. Dude, I think Trivium are going to fulfill the prophecy that we thought they might have fulfilled in the late 2000s. I think this is it. I think they're going to do it. This is amazing. What an album.
Completely agreed. I hope it materializes. I really, really do. I want to see that taking place, because no band has worked as consistently as Trivium, really just plugging away, building that fan base. And like you say, Matt Heafy is a wonderful human being. Do you know he was at a park yesterday just cooking for people?
I didn't know that, but that doesn't surprise me.
He put it on his Twitter, being like, "Oh, it's a great weekend. Album's coming out soon. Really, really happy. Just to celebrate, I'm going to be in this park at this time. I'm cooking my speciality. I hope you like putana, which I think is like some French chicken thing." And he's just like cooking for fans. What a man! And he does that Twitch channel. You're right. And he takes requests. He plays random Trivium songs for people. He shows little riffs. He does little covers, and it's wicked, absolutely wicked.
Yeah.
You're right. That is a guy that deserves to be, and from a band that deserves to be at the forefront of metal. And I have hope too that they're going to do that here. If not, I actually think that Trivium have a ceiling of being this lauded, heavily followed and obsessed with metal band that never really become universally popular over on the other side, in the same way that Russian Maiden did. Maiden never had a hit single in the contemporary way. I mean, Run to the Hills was never top 5 in the UK charts. Doesn't need to be, but they can actually build a massive following outside of the traditional pathways. And I think that Trivium are doing that, and they continue to deserve to be. If you're a metal fan, they've got to be one of the bands that you are, enamored with, because they've got like we said before, they've got 3 or 4 albums that are just tremendous. They've got 20 to 25 songs now that are just incredible. It's a better resume than most. So you might be right. They might be fulfilling the prophecy, which might be the name of the next Trivium album, to be honest.
If they listen to this, fat chance of that. But if they listen to this, you're welcome, lads.
Hey, if they can discuss, if you can find Ern, he can find us.
Yeah, that's good. That is, yeah. If you can find
we have a shot.
Yeah,
Matt, if you're listening, man, just let us know.
Amazing. That's where we're going to leave off episode 82 of the Noizze Podcast. We are going to be back next Tuesday. We're going to be reviewing the new Crazy the Filth album, and I'm going to look around and see.
Is Ed Sheeran on it?
Brilliant, yeah. Oh, Matt, I'm still really fascinated about what's going to come from that. We're going to be reviewing the new Crazy the Filth album, and I'm going to have a look around at some other stuff that's coming out too. Thank you for listening. Give us a subscription on YouTube if you're watching there, or a like or a follow, depending on whichever service you are using. Follow us on Twitter at Noizze Podcast. Me and Sam both run that account. Listen to In the Court of the Dragon on Friday. Let it blow your mind. Go and see Trivium next month with Heaven Shall Burn. Me and Sam are going to be in Birmingham having the time of our lives. Just hugging each other, drinking, shouting, being silly. It's going to be awesome. It's In the Court of the Dragon is an amazing record. Listen to it on Friday. Support Trivium. They're amazing. Thank you for listening. We will be back next Tuesday. We love you. Bye.